I was sitting in one of those yellow school buses with a large group of my friends. We were coming home from a marching band competition. We were a well-behaved but loud group. We would amuse ourselves on these long drives by singing as many pop and Disney songs as we possibly could. But as we turned the corner in Ventura of Telegraph Road onto Wake Forest, we had a tradition of serenading the bus driver who had been putting up with us for the drive. It was probably 10, maybe 10:30 p.m. on a Saturday in October 2005. And we turned the corner and broke into our rousing, "Hail to the bus driver, bus driver, bus driver." But as we drove closer and closer to the parking lot at our school, the singing at first in the front of the bus stopped. And it was replaced with murmuring. And pretty soon the entire bus was quiet as we observed part of the student parking lot on fire. Our music teacher, who happened to be Jewish, walked over to investigate. And he came back to say that there was a large swastika burned into our lot. He immediately called the school administration, and they told him not to worry. The maintenance crew would come and get rid of it the next day. And by Monday morning, when students came back to school, no one would know. On Monday morning, a friend came up to me. "Did you see?" "What?" I asked. "Someone painted a large swastika in the student parking lot." Painted. The school administration painted over the burnt swastika with white paint. By the afternoon, the school fixed their mistake and painted the swastika into a large white square on black asphalt. This wasn't my first experience with anti-Semitism. I remember hearing as a child in my classrooms that Jews killed Jesus, and people threw pennies down in front of me, saying that since I was a Jew, I had to pick them up. I remember as maybe a 10-year-old, a sermon from my rabbi who described the then rising anti-Semitism specifically in Ventura. I heard about the two members of our youth group who were invited to a friend's church group gathering, only to find themselves closed in the office of the pastor, being questioned on why they didn't believe in Jesus. And I vividly remember hearing the story about the teen in our community who was lured to a parking lot by a girl he thought he was going on a date with, and he was beaten by a group of her friends because he was Jewish. So no, this wasn't my first experience of anti-Semitism, but it was the first time I watched how someone responded to such an act, painting a sterile white square where hate used to be. We call today Rosh Hashana, the new year, but in the Torah, this day is called Yom Teruah, the day of shouting or blasting of the shofar. This holiday was, and still now, is the day we stand as a people and listen to the shofar, to each other, and to that which ails our people. One of the many biblical roles of the shofar was a tool to announce danger. Teruah, coming from the Hebrew word lehatriah, to warn. Yom Teruah, Rosh Hashana, calls us to attention. I think that, like me, many of you have given anti-Semitism more attention than you would have liked over the past few years. Anti-Semitic attacks, the targeting of Jewish businesses, bomb threats, and swatting of Jewish institutions social media platforms exploding with extremism, Charlottesville, the Tree of Life Synagogue in Squirrel Hill, Colleyville, Texas, and especially this year, which the ADL recorded as the most anti-Semitic incidents of any year since their tracking began in 1979, it hit home for us. The anti-Jewish flyering on the Mesa and in the downtown parking garage just last week. The intimidation of Jewish students on UCSB's campus and at Chabad in Isla Vista. The swastika at Dos Pueblos High School. I know it is on our minds. With all of it named in one place, it feels overwhelming. It can feel like it's time to circle the wagons, lock the doors, arm the guards, question if we should move to Israel, and pray that we just be left alone. And were I to think that, I would be wrong. Were I to do that, I would be wrong. And yet, the shofar is sounding. I had a parent ask me for the first time this year, how do I teach my kid about anti-Semitism? How do I tell him that there are people who hate him because he is Jewish? What a depressing question, but one that we have all confronted, one that we have been confronting generation after generation. Hatred of Jews and the Jewish people has been one of the only continuous facets of Jewish life. Over the millennia, we have changed the way we practice our faith, changed our homes, changed our foods, changed our language, but anti-Jewishness, anti-Semitism has been a constant. The very first incident recorded of this sentiment is in the Torah. We didn't call it anti-Semitism then, but if we define that as an irrational hatred of the Jewish people, culminating in destructive acts against them, then Amalek is the first. Only days after they had crossed the sea from Egypt, Amalek attacked the Israelites from the rear, preying on the weak, the stragglers and helpless, with no provocation or motivation other than hatred. The shofars of war sounded, but too late. Amalek was repelled, but too many were murdered in cold blood. After Amalek, it was the Babylonians, the Romans, the Catholic Church, the lords of Europe and the caliphs of the Muslim world, the Spanish, Martin Luther, the Nazis, and so many others in between. But since the Holocaust, anti-Semitism has been more muted, disdained, looked down upon. And that changed last year. Although the tides were already shifting, Kanye West brought anti-Semitism into popular culture, with all of the tropes that come with it. Jews control money and the media. The Nazis and Hitler weren't that bad. Jews aren't even the true Jewish people in the first place. It was such a monumental shift last year that the ADL started to track Kanye West-related anti-Semitic incidents. 10% of all anti-Semitic incidents from October to December of 2022 were Kanye West-related, either by him or inspired by him. How do we respond to such ridiculous notions? In 1990, at Columbia University, virulent anti-Semite Leonard Jeffries was invited to speak to an on-campus group. His visit led to a major Jewish protest of his lecture. But one Jewish student, Zev Magen, penned a letter highlighting the ridiculousness of their necessity to protest. In it, he wrote, and this is long, but it's worth it. A man calls you a pig. Do you walk around with a sign explaining that, in fact, you are not a pig? Do you hand out leaflets expostulating in detail upon the manifold differences between you and a pig? A pig has a snout, I have a nose. A pig wallows in the mud, I just occasionally step in puddles. Do you stand on a soapbox and discourse eruditely on why, in general, it is extremely not nice to call people pigs, and appeal to the populace to please have no bond with such an individual rude and nasty enough to say such things about an upright citizen as yourself? Fellow Jews, he wrote, where is your dignity? You want people to like you, right? Well, how do you go about achieving this? Do you launch a campus-wide "Don't Dislike Dan" campaign, replete with billboard petitions, full-page ads, and a couple of lobbying organizations? Or do you run your life a bit differently, concentrating your time and effort on being the best yourself you can be, growing and learning and living and enjoying, treating others fairly and kindly, setting up criteria for right and wrong, and trying like the Dickens to adhere to them? And if despite this, a few folks nevertheless persist in being incurable slime balls and absolutely refuse to interact genially and courteously with you, you move on. His humorous but powerful take on how to respond to anti-Semitism resonates so deeply with me. When we call out something as anti-Semitic, make them apologize and recant, all we have done is painted over their words with a white square. We have sterilized the situation. And that is what we have been doing over and over and over again. Why do I bother to give anti-Semites an iota of my attention? Any moment I think about them is a moment I'm not living my life to the fullest. The shofar is sounding, but I do not want to listen, because no matter how much effort I put into it, I know that deep down I will never defeat the anti-Semites. There will always be another person or group to take the last one's place. And were I to think that, I would be wrong. Were I to do that, I would be wrong. Because we must, at every instance, stand up to hatred, defy anti-Semitism. We can give no ground. The work of the ADL to combat anti-Semitism and extremism everywhere is incredibly valuable. They are on the front lines of this fight every single day, educating and advocating. And we feel nothing but admiration and gratitude for what they do. And of course, specifically what Dan Meisel and Ashley Myers do here in Santa Barbara. The whole reason the ADL is in the news right now, being targeted by Elon Musk, is because we have left them on the front lines alone. Every Jewish organization should be with them arm in arm, calling a spade and a Nazi a Nazi. But the point that Zev Magen makes is that this is not enough. The other answer to anti-Semitism, he writes, is Jewish growth, Jewish knowledge, Jewish joy, is a deepened Jewish commitment, a more powerful internal Jewish cohesion, a more vigorous dedication to Jewish outreach. You combat anti-Semitism by promoting that which the anti-Semite wants to crush, Jewish vitality. When the anti-Semite says we control the money, we give tzedakah. When the anti-Semite says we control the weather, we protect the earth. When the anti-Semite says we aren't the true Jewish people, we learn about our heritage. When the anti-Semite says we manipulate world events to our benefit, We seek out those most in need. We stop painting with white squares. We start painting them blue. Our Judaism deserves to be lived in public. We don't throw safety to the wind. We don't gamble with our lives. But we should be out and loud and proud of our identity as Jews and make it very clear that we are here. Our tradition is full of ways to be outwardly Jewish. Put a mezuzah on your home and on your place of business as well. Put a Hanukkah in your window. Send gifts of food to the needy at Purim. Invite guests to dinner for Shabbat, Sukkot, and Pesach. And we can still do more. Experiment with wearing Judaism outwardly, either a kippah or a Magen David, a Jewish star, or a chai. We can celebrate Shabbat in the park and at the beach. Have public Sukkot and Hanukkiot at the holidays. Maybe even bring back the Jewish festival. I will raise my daughter in a Jewish community proud of who we are, of the values we represent. The shofar is sounding, and we will rise to meet it. And while we dedicate ourselves to promoting our Jewish vitality, here are 3 things that each of you can do to respond to anti-Semitism in an effective and meaningful way. First, you can stop using the terms anti-Semitism on the right and anti-Semitism on the left. In the divisive times we live in, doing so calls more attention to whether it is on the right or the left and diminishes the anti-Semitism part. The right and the left draw from each other. They use the same tropes in different ways, and Jews need to be fully united in calling out anti-Semitism wherever it comes from. Second, you can explore the new national movement, Stand Up to Jewish Hate. Anti-Semitism is not a problem for the Jews to deal with alone. We need our friends and allies to stand with us. The blue square is not just a metaphor. It is a visual symbol of a new movement of Jewish vitality and visibility on social media, where extremism has exploded over the last few years. Blue square pins like this one are available outside for you to take with you, with more information on the movement and how to get involved. And finally, you can support our youth and teens in the formation of their Jewish identity. Because of social media, our teens are exposed to more anti-Semitism, more anti-Israel bias, and more hate than any of us were growing up. Additionally, our teens in Santa Barbara are approached by Christian youth groups trying to recruit them to participate. One of our teens even told me that the adult leader of the group reached out to her multiple times, and even when learning she was Jewish, tried to convince her to come to their Bible study. More than ever, it is critical that we provide them with fun, supportive, innovative, and deep connection to their Jewish community. To this end, we are working to bring our youth more to the forefront of congregational life. A teen may have handed you your machzor this evening. Get to know them. Be curious about their life. We already provide Shabbat experiences for our younger children, but nothing for our teen population. That will change this year. And in December, we are taking 20 of our teens to Israel, where they will connect more with each other, with their heritage, and to their Jewish identity. And you can support that journey. As the Israelites stood in anticipation at the end of their 40 years of wandering, they are reminded of Amalek and the pain inflicted by this enemy. And then God issues a confusing, almost contradictory commandment. Remember to forget Amalek. Remember to forget. How? According to our sages, by taking care of the people Amalek affected the most. When we protect the stragglers, the feeble and the needy, we remember to forget those who sought to harm us. The answer to anti-Semitism is Jewish growth, a deepened Jewish commitment. We still call it out and educate and advocate. And we give no hold over where and how we are Jews. Tonight is Rosh Hashana, Yom Teruah. The shofar is sounding. How will you respond? Shana Tova.